Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Film for Fans podcast, your home for movie news, reviews, and movie fan views. This is the podcast from movie fans for movie fans. I am your host, Ryan Dunlevy, joined, as always, by my co-host, Rob Dunham.
Got the silver and black today. It's very pretty.
Yeah, sporting KC, like it. Yeah, that's a good color for them. That's not a normal one.
I like one time I wore this jersey and it says IV Funds on it, and I don't remember where it was, but some lady comes up to me and is like, "I know IV Funds," and I'm like, "Doesn't have anything to do with why I'm wearing the shirt, but okay."
Awesome. All right. Well, we have a fantastic show in store for you. We're going to talk about the box office. We'll talk about Suicide Squad, what's coming up this week. We're going to have a discussion about sequel movies that should never have been made, which should probably be pretty interesting. And we will talk about our watch list, and we'll give you a little bit more in-depth review of Jungle Cruise now that both of us have seen it. So, Rob, you ready to get started?
I am.
All right, well, let's begin with last week's box office. Suicide Squad takes the number one spot at the box office. Not terribly surprising. However, the number itself did not meet expectations. It was a little bit below anticipated opening. So the film debuted number one at 26.5 million. Industry expectations were around 30 million. Now, this movie cost 185 million to produce. Now, that doesn't mean between international and all this other stuff that it won't eventually, make money. But it did not do what was anticipated. Some people are calling it a disaster. Some people are trying to blame the entire movie industry. I think this is a little bit more of a local phenomenon in terms of related to this particular movie. Rob, what do you make of the not fantastic results for Suicide Squad?
Well, I do think that part of it has to be, like you said, related to this particular movie because it's remake 5 years after the original one.
Yes.
Or it's been 5 years. I don't know. It's not long. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people are hesitant to invest their money in going to see it because they have memories of the last one. And if the last one wasn't something they liked, then why would they go see a new version of it? I think that having James Gunn involved, obviously intrigues a lot of people, but it's not gonna move the needle for probably a whole bunch of people who saw it in the first one and weren't impressed by it. So I definitely think that's part of it. I think the fact that this was on HBO Max, correct?
It was same day release.
The fact that this is on HBO Max, I think, hurts it a little bit compared to Disney Plus because HBO just has all their movies as part of the subscription, so it's not getting that extra $30 per rental thing that Disney Plus was getting for Black Widow, etc. Mm-hmm. Which makes it a little harder, I guess, to calculate how many people are actually getting HBO Max to watch this movie, and that's going to impact the numbers too. So I that's one thing I'm really interested in. How do they figure out and tally those things, since the models are vastly different between Disney and Warner?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think for me, it's definitely related to this movie in particular and combined with the HBO model. Like you're saying, there's already trepidation about the fact that it's another Suicide Squad movie. The last Harley Quinn movie didn't do real well, even though it got some decent to okay reviews. I remember we watched it. It was better than I thought it was going to be, but so there wasn't necessarily a giant hype for that. And if Harley Quinn is not your star, you don't have a lot else. If she's not a draw for that, I mean, Idris Elba is a great actor, but you're not getting a ton of, he's not necessarily destination theater. And so you combine that with some not particularly fantastic reviews coming out ahead of time about it, with the fact that anyone with an HBO subscription can watch it without going to the theaters. I think those factors combine to kill the numbers for the box office. I think it still would have done reasonably well had it just been a solo theater release, a la F9, which is one of the reasons F9 made $70 million in its opening weekend. If people have to choose between seeing a movie and not seeing a movie, going to the theaters and seeing a movie or not seeing it, they'll go. I think probably people would have gone. If you give them a choice between going to the theater to see a movie they're about and just watching it on HBO Max, where they probably already have a subscription, I think you're seeing the results of that. So I think the combination of the not particularly overwhelming buzz for this movie with the ease of access outside the theater really hurt it.
Yeah, I don't think it's super surprising, to be honest. And I think it's not a great sign for how it will do long term, because we've seen almost every movie that's been top the week it comes out has like a 60% drop the next week.
Yeah.
Because people just aren't, the word of mouth thing is not working with the way the model is right now.
Yeah.
It appears. The streaming model is killing the long-term theater run at this point. I think it's pretty clear that that's happening. People who want to go see it initially in theaters go see it, and then there's a real drop off. So I think we're starting to see that perhaps some of the biggest of all movies can make it, even if they're chasing some pennies for dollars. With the streaming model, some of the big movies can still make it. The medium to small ones are being hurt by it. So I don't know. We'll see what Suicide Squad does in the long run, but there it is. I do, however, anticipate a new #1 movie this coming week, as we're going to now switch to what's coming in the box office this week. So the three main movies coming out this particular week are, of course, Free Guy, starring Ryan Reynolds. You have a horror sequel in Don't Breathe 2, and the biopic Respect coming out. Obviously, we've talked about Free Guy on several occasions on the podcast, and that is highly anticipated. So Ryan Reynolds plays a non-player character in a video game and finds out there's a real world out there, and he's interacting with it, and it looks funny and interesting and engaging. Respect follows the rise of Aretha Franklin's career from child singing in her father's church choir to international stardom. So that one is an Aretha Franklin biopic. And Don't Breathe 2 is a follow-up, obviously, to Don't Breathe, which is a movie about a home invasion and all the terror that ensues. So, Rob, I'm assuming Free Guy is your top. So give me your thoughts. Give me your thoughts on the other two. Do either of the other two intrigue you at all? I would say that Respect I'm interested in, just because I like the history of music, and be cool to see some of the storytelling involved. That I know that I've liked similar movies. Think of like Cadillac Records and Dreamgirls. Were both a couple movies that I thought were pretty decent. So that seems like it's probably in the same kind of mold as those. So I'm sure I will watch it at some point. I'm just not sure if I will watch it in the theater. As far as Don't Breathe 2 goes, I would probably only watch that if my sister watched it with me, because she really likes horror movies. And my wife does not. So I don't really go to horror movies by myself, because I don't really see that as a good time.
I hear it. See, we're both running up against our proclivity to not particularly care for the horror genre.
Yeah.
On this one. Yeah. So I would agree. I mean, I think Respect has the chance to be very good. Aretha Franklin is obviously a extremely well-known and interesting character. Probably time they gave her a biopic. So hopefully it's good. Now let's talk a little bit about Free Guy. What is something you are most looking forward to about Free Guy?
I really just want to see the creativity of the different things they throw at Ryan Reynolds' character.
Yeah.
Because it's fun. It's funny with a trailer like a movie like that where it's loaded with special effects. And I think like Black Widow is kind of the same, and some other movies. You see like less than 2 minutes of the entire movie in the trailer. Yet somehow you're like, oh, I've seen it all.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I like to go see a movie like this in the theater, because there's still like 100 minutes of stuff you haven't seen. So I'm really interested in seeing. I believe when I looked today, because I was considering going to see it, I think it said it was an hour and 55 minutes long. Okay. So there's a lot in there, a lot of potential. So I'm really interested in seeing like what kind of video game tropes they use, and if they're effective, and if they're funny, and if they pull it off, because I think it's an ambitious idea. So we'll see.
Mm-hmm. I think for me, the most intriguing part about it is, can they pull off a compelling digital world? I think one of the things, if there have been some great and classic movies that have taken the world of video games and translated them into something that's eminently watchable and amazing. I mean, you think going way back, you have the original Tron. The original Tron made history as kind of like the getting inside the digital space in the video games. For me, I always loved Tron Legacy because it really felt like it delivered on the digital world.
And we're absolutely not talking about the Doom movie series.
Yeah. So when it's done well, it's done really, really well, and it's really compelling. And as you just alluded to, there are times when it is not done well, and it is not compelling, and it is not interesting.
Also looking at you, Mortal Kombat.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It hasn't always been done well, but there's slightly different in that Mortal Kombat wasn't trying necessarily to be a video game in the movie. It was just a movie about a video game. So it has the potential. That's what I'm intrigued on. Can it deliver on the potential of giving you kind of the modern day video game experience and placing you inside the video game like it potentially could? Yeah. All right. Well, that's what's coming out in theaters this week. And if you haven't had a chance to see, there's a number of movies out. So there's plenty to choose from at the moment, which is fantastic. So make sure you head out to the theaters and go see Free Guy or any of the ones that you have missed. Respect. If you're in a Don't Breathe too, go for that. Okay. So now we have to move on to our discussion section. So to begin the discussion section, I'm going to reference an article about something I'm not particularly happy about. And that will lead us right into our topic for the evening. Disney Plus is getting a brand new Home Alone movie this year because we're not allowed to have nice things. Yes, this was coming out November 12th. They're trying to ramp it up like this is going to be amazing. It's going to star Ellie Kemper, Rob Delaney, Archie Yates, Kenan Thompson's going to be in there. To say that I am skeptical is an understatement. I mean, we've already seen what it looks like to run out these terrible sequels to Home Alone. What was it? What'd they end up doing? Like 3 other ones that
Macaulay Culkin isn't walking through that door.
Yeah, Macaulay Culkin is not rocking through that door. I didn't check to see, but probably John Williams is not scoring this one.
Yeah.
The likelihood of this being anything other than straight garbage, I think is extremely low. I would wager that this has a 95% chance to suck. I just don't see how. especially
considering
when,
that Home Alone should have stopped after Home Alone 2, then yes, you're correct.
I mean, we've seen what this looks like.
Yeah.
We've seen, and it's not good. It's not good. Besides the fact that Home Alone was one of those, I mean, it's a period piece. It really is, because in the modern era of cell phones and those sorts of things, a lot of that goes completely by the wayside. So it has a time bound thing, and it's just such a classic. I don't know how you do this in a way that actually works. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree 100%. Like I said, Home Alone should have stopped after 2.
Yeah. Oh man.
That did get us a good John Mulaney joke, so I'm pretty happy about that. But other than that, it's not worthwhile.
Yeah, there's just some wells you shouldn't drink out of, and once
that's a deep subject.
Yeah. Gosh. It only took you 10 15 minutes to get the first one of those in this time.
Speaking of which, when we get to it, that was the best part of Jungle Cruise. Dwayne Johnson's lines. Yeah, I got fired from the orange juice factory. Couldn't concentrate.
Spoiler alert on Jungle Cruise. But there are some times where going back for multiple courses in a meal just enhances the meal. And there are sometimes like the donut rule. Okay. One donut is fantastic. The more you push it on donuts, once you get past one donut, the law of diminishing returns hits hard.
Unless you're Homer Simpson.
All right. So now what we need to do as we line this up for our discussion is we need to pick out the ones that should have been donuts when they attempted to go for the buffet. Which movies are sequels that should never have been made? That's our discussion item for today. Sequels that should never have been made. We've seen some trilogies and multiple ones that have lasted and done really, really well, and some that have not. Let's talk about the ones that have not. You got a few for us, Rob?
Well, I think you know what my first answer is, because
well, let's get right to it.
The only thing I ever talk about. So
give us one.
Indiana Jones and the crystal alien. What, I don't know what is going on in Mexico for some reason. Yeah, that movie should not have been made. It makes me sad every time I think about its existence.
Mm-hmm.
One I will say that maybe, I guess this could be controversial, because in some ways you needed the movies to be made to complete the trilogy. In other ways, I think there are parts of the movies that don't enhance what's going on with the trilogy, and that would be the last 2 Matrix movies.
I wondered if you were going to go there.
Yeah.
If you were going to go there.
Revolutions and Reloaded. Which one is first? I don't remember.
Reloaded is number 2.
Okay.
Revolutions is number 3.
I think there are good parts of both those movies, but I don't think either of them live up to the first one. And I think there are parts of both that detract from the overall story that they were trying to tell, that they started with the first one.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't believe they made the first one with. Did they make the first one with the intention of making more than one? Because
I feel like they did.
Okay.
I don't remember the exact timeline on that.
Yeah.
But I feel like there was intention for there to be multiples, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, it just seemed like some of the storytelling in the second and third one makes me wonder if they had a cohesive plan in place to make it all come together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for that one, I just want to comment on that one real quick. For me, I've never, it's clear the second and third movies are not as good. I mean, there is a downslope at first movie, second movie, third movie. I think where they went wrong is the scenes outside of the Matrix in the final 2 movies really like the whole Zion concept was not well developed and was not particularly appealing concept.
Mm-hmm.
And especially when you get into the third movie where so much of it features Zion and features the real world, like it really, I think that was where they went wrong. The Matrix stuff I thought was still good. And I thought some of the action, especially in Reloaded, I really enjoyed. But I felt like, I still feel like the first one is not a complete story and needed the other two. So I'm a little on that side. Okay. Hit us up with them.
I think also and again, this is another one where they were kind of necessary, especially given the fact that the books exist. But I'm not talking about Jurassic World, but the sequels to Jurassic Park were in much the same way not equal to the original Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
And they kind of had to go there because Lost World is its own book.
Mm-hmm.
I understand why they had to do that because of the success of the first one, and they were successful. Like, they made money, so people went and saw them, and it wasn't a complete failure. But taking away some of the characters at different points, like, it seemed like they were maybe going back to the well too much. But like I said, I understand that they were made on existing literature, so it's not like you can be like, oh, they made up this story and it was terrible. Like, they just took Crichton's books and made more movies, so I can't really blame them too much for it.
Yeah.
When it was making money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think part of this discussion is, does it, and I think I had it formulated clear in my mind a second ago, but like, if a second movie is not as good as its fantastic first movie, does that automatically detract from the first movie? Or can the first movie still stand on its own, even if the second one is not as great? Because I think there is a difference between, hey, we made a masterpiece and now we just made a good movie, versus we made a great movie and now we made a terrible follow-up.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So
I also like to throw out Rocky V. Because Rocky IV is my, in my opinion, the best one. So that makes it even worse that the fifth one was terrible.
Yeah, the fifth one was pretty bad.
You could argue about how good each one is, but to me, Rocky IV is just like the pinnacle of Cold War sporting movie.
Yeah.
And like, it's an archetype for me. Like, I think the first Rocky is one just because of it telling that underdog story, and I think the fourth one is one because it's that geopolitical conflict with sport, and I don't think any movie has done it better. So when you have two movies in the series that are like these massive capstones, and then you have a crapstone in Rocky V, it's kind of hard to look over. I like I think it was Bill Simmons, he's a sports writer, and he hates Rocky V as well. And he'd always be like, I want to go to the store and ask for the box set of Rocky 1 through 4, and you can throw 5 in the garbage.
Yeah. What's fascinating is they really have made, along that series, they have made 7 movies, and 6 of them are decent to very good.
Yeah.
It's just fascinating that one was just straight trash.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. What do you got?
All right. So I'm going to start with Dumb and Dumberer When Harry Met Lloyd, 2003. Somehow they decided, hey, let's throw nobody actors into a sequel to one of the greatest comedies of all time, make them younger, and then make the entire thing stupid. It's like they didn't understand the comedic genius and thought, oh yeah, we can just replicate this with 2 other random dudes and a terrible script. Yeah, let's do that. We'll throw it out there, and name recognition. This is, to me, one of the definitions of a sequel that should never have been made. And, we can say what we want about the second one that came out with Jim Carrey and Jeff Daniels, but there's no doubt about it. when Dumb and Dumber or When Harry Met Lloyd should never have been made.
I'm fortunate enough to say I have never seen it.
Yeah, you're not missing out, man. It was terrible. Second up on my list are two sequels by Sandra Bullock, where she should have known better. Speed 2, Miss Congeniality 2.
My wife's going to fight you on the second one.
Yeah. There's sometimes where a premise is a one-off premise, and putting someone in the exact same thing, in the exact same premise again, is tiresome and ridiculous and cliche.
Yeah.
And both of these movies qualified. The originals were excellent. Speed was great. Miss Congeniality was great. This is a donut one. Once was good. You start going back to that well, diminishing returns really, really fast. In particular, like the character arc in Miss Congeniality 2 I just didn't like it at all. And I just thought that was one. Miss Congeniality 2 was probably better than Speed 2, but either way.
When you're hyper focused on like a specific setting or area or idea, it's really hard to be clever with it multiple times.
Yeah. You run out of creativity real fast, and you end up it ends up being, whether intentional or not, it ends up being lazy, because you end up having to go back to the well, use the same jokes, use the same premises, the same cliches. And it lacks art. It lacks the art that is a good film whenever you're doing that.
How do you feel the Pitch Perfect movies? Because I think that's one series that might have pulled that off.
I haven't seen all of them. I'm pretty sure I've seen the first two, and I thought the first two were pretty good, if I remember correctly. I think the first two were pretty good. I think it worked reasonably well, at least initially. It's for the Mighty Ducks, Home Alone, or Mighty Ducks and Mighty Ducks.
Yeah.
2. I only vaguely remember 3. It's been way too long since I've seen 3.
Yeah.
I had the first 2 memorized as a kid.
I think almost everyone, at least that I know, thinks D2 is probably a better movie.
It's a really good movie.
Like the Mighty Ducks is classic, but I think Mighty Ducks 2 is a better movie overall. I think some other ones that would fit that, in my opinion, The Empire Strikes Back is the best Star Wars movie, so that makes it better than A New Hope, which was the first one. So it can be done. I think the original Indiana Jones trilogy, you could argue that the sequels are better than the first one, I think.
I would say 3 is better than 1. I think 2 is the worst, in my opinion. But we discussed that. A while ago. So I got one more. I got one more for you here. Independence Day Resurgence. Seriously, Independence Day. Like, you don't need another one. You need more
independence.
And it's just like the depths they had to go to scrape a razor thin plot out of that one. Just, it didn't work. And most of these movies, to me, the existence of these does not detract from the originals. I'm not one who, well, now that I've seen this and hate this, I'm now going to lessen the other ones. But mostly they just get thrown into the memory hole, and you just kind of pretend they don't exist and move on throughout your day. It's like, I know that Hollywood is, we'll scramble for whatever buck we can. But sometimes they have to realize that they're making artwork here. That there is a goal. There's an artistic goal here. And you need to keep that in mind when you're going trying to run the risk of potentially damaging products. All right. You got anything else on that?
No, I think I said my piece.
Okay. All right. So let's move on to our watch list. These are movies that we have watched over the past week, and we'll give you a brief synopsis and we'll have a brief discussion on them. Rob, you want to start?
Yeah, so I went and saw a movie in the theater actually for the first time in a month, I think. It's been ridiculously busy. And today watched Jungle Cruise with my family, and I thought it was very good. I would say above average. And it was a movie that I think everyone in my family, even down to my 6-year-old boy, liked. So that was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
I really I like Dwayne Johnson a lot. I think he's very talented and I think he did a phenomenal job in the movie. It's funny. The writing was funny. It was engaging. The storyline was engaging. I like how they held off like explaining who everyone was for a decent part of the movie and added some intrigue to it. The setting was really good as well. I just thought overall it was a really good movie. So I know you had said that you thought some of the mystical elements were a bit out there perhaps, but I thought that they made them look at least believable. So I didn't have too much of an issue with it.
Okay. Let's get into we'll give you a spoiler warning here because I want to get your opinion on a couple of the couple of things specifically. So this is spoiler warning. We are going to give details of Jungle Cruise at this point. If you wish to avoid them, you can skip ahead to the next topic. There is a key below you in the video description that'll tell you how far you need to go. All right, so there's your spoiler warning. The thing that bothered me most is the adversaries and their like the bee guy and the snake guy. And it was so out there. And it was so, it was a detractor for me. It was like, I mentioned that it reminded me quite a bit of Pirates Dead Man's Chest.
Mm-hmm.
And I really didn't like Dead Man's Chest because of it, like the Barnacle people.
Yeah.
And that plot line it sucked it out of me a little bit. And it was my main thing. Like I didn't have a problem with hey, we're going to find this particular plant or that, there some of that stuff. But I just think like the we turned into Barnacle people, version 2.0 was just too much. It was too far for me on that. So that to me it took it down from being like an A to like a B or a B plus for me. So I'm not hating on the movie and don't think it was awful by any stretch, because you're right. Dwayne Johnson was excellent. I enjoyed Emily Blunt. I thought they did some excellent character development and some good writing, and some of the action was fun and interesting. But that was just a little too much for me.
I love the line when the one guy was like, "I'm disgusting," and the other guy was like, "Speak for yourself, I'm delicious," because he like his curse was that he had bees and he's like made out of honey.
Yeah, I would give it to that. That was a pretty funny line.
I thought I guess I didn't have as much of a problem with it because I think visually they made it look compelling, like it was actually happening, like it didn't seem hokey. I guess you could argue whether or not it was necessary. I'm not sure how else you would show that they would like being devoured by the Amazon around them. I thought that was an interesting way to do it. So yeah, it's hard to say. One thing I'm really interested in looking at, since I have not been on the actual ride before, is to see how many elements of the ride are in the movie, because that's one thing that was really intriguing to me about Pirates of the Caribbean.
For one thing, I was told that there's a lot of there's bad jokes on the ride. I'm told that, so that I think that was an element that they carried over for sure, or the bad dad jokes.
Yeah, which I thought were great. I love when the little girl was like, "Mommy, can you please stop?"
Yeah. Or how he kind of I enjoyed how he kind of had his little setup there at the beginning of the movie, where he had very ride-esque people coming along the side of the river and doing things. I thought that was a fun tie-in to the fact that it was originally a ride.
Yeah. I like how they developed it. I think, like Pirates of the Caribbean, they did a good job of fleshing out something and making it into a whole movie with compelling storyline. So I would recommend going to see it. Jungle Cruise.
Yeah.
I also, excuse me. The other movie I watched this week was Wish Dragon on Netflix, which is an animated movie, I believe from a Chinese studio. It's a Oriental studio. I think it's Chinese. I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, then I feel real dumb. But it is it is redubbed in English on Netflix. You can also, I believe, you can watch it in Chinese. And it was a pretty neat little story about a dragon who grants wishes, and definitely a kids movie. A lot of bright colors, a lot of energy, some very funny things, some funnier things for adults and kids. Typical animated movie, but it tells a good story about a guy and a girl who were friends when they were kids, and one of them became famous and the other one lost touch with them, and they get back in touch, and also tells the story of the boy's interaction with the dragon who he meets and how he helps him. So it reminded me a lot of like Aladdin. A lot of the same themes are involved, like the dragon even going so far as to say things like, I can't bring people back from the dead, I can't make people fall in love with you. It's like, oh, hide the genie from Aladdin. But I guess, if there's ever a genie, that's what they're going to say, right? Because that's what genies do. So I can't blame him too much for that. But I thought it was enjoyable, especially if you have kids. I'd recommend checking out Wish Dragon, and that's on Netflix.
Okay. For me, so after going through all of the Dragon Tattoo books, the original trilogy again, I talked about how I had watched the American version and I really liked the American version. But I was desiring to go back through the Swedish trilogy and I couldn't find it anywhere. So I finally just broke down and purchased it. And purchased the extended editions because they were originally, the extended editions were really 2 parts for each movie. As they aired, they were aired in part 1 and part 2. And so it's interesting. They smash them together, but they still keep the credits that ended one section and the titles that start the second section. So it's interesting how that works on the version that I purchased. But what I was surprised about most was how much the girl in the dragon tattoo deviated. The Swedish version deviated from the books significantly more than I even remembered, to the point where I'm like, what the heck were you doing? The second one, it held up a little closer. What I enjoy about the trilogy is they went ahead and made all 3 of them, unlike the American version where it's like, hey, we made the first one. They're like, no, well, we won't do the other 2.
Yeah.
And we'll wait a few years and skip ahead to book number 4 and then do a terrible job of that. So it was nice actually getting to see the rest of the story play out. It's fascinating that I've recently watched. I've been going through the Mission Impossible movies, and I just started Prometheus, and a Ghost Protocol has the main actor who plays in the Swedish version, Michael Nyqvist, plays the role of plays the main role in the movie. And then Numi Rapace, or Rapace, I don't know how to pronounce her name, but she is the main character in Prometheus. So it was interesting that after this trilogy, both of them ended up breaking out into American cinema. And Numi Rapace has done a number of movies in American cinema, and she does well. She's a good actress, and I think she was a very good choice for Elizabeth Salander. I think I probably still prefer Rooney Mara, but they both did quite well. So that's that. I went back through Tenet again because I have to, and it's fun. There's so many incredibly cool special features. This is one of the reasons why you need to own the movie, about the making of it. And it's fascinating because everyone is always like, okay, that's a complex story, but to see the levels of complexity that they actually had to go through to make the movie and to keep the story straight in their own heads. I mean, you have Christopher Nolan saying, almost every time I thought I had it figured out as to how this would play out, when we actually sat down and went through the rules and figured out what it would look like, it was completely different. It was just not instinctive. Or there's a scene where he's talking to the stunt coordinator about how they're going to film the fight scenes where one guy is in reverse, is going backward in time, while one guy is going forward in time. And it was something along the lines of, well, tell your actors, film it going forward, record it, have them play it backwards, and then have the actors go back and act it out going backwards, and then play that forwards again, and then run that backwards. it's crazy. Or them talking about how much they relied on the computer models to say who was where at what time, so that they knew how to film particular scenes. So really cool stuff on that. And I've watched The Prisoner of Azkaban, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, which is one of my favorites of the Harry Potters. Mm-hmm. So great movie. All right, Rob, I didn't put this in the outline, but let's see if we can brainstorm a recommendation to close out the show. So what would be a recommendation? Any recommendation at all? Give us something to watch.
I've probably said this before, but I just got the book out of the library because I'm going to read it. So getting the book makes me want to watch the movie again, but Cloud Atlas with Tom Hanks, Halle Berry, Jim Broadbent, etc. A whole bunch of people, Hugo Weaving, Hugh Grant. It's just like, the book is insane. I've read the book before, so I'm looking forward to reading it again. And seeing how they filmed it is really something else, because there's like 8 different storylines. You've got people playing multiple people, to the point where at the end of the movie, when they show some of the people, I remember being like, wait, that was them? They just do a really good job of blending some people in, makeup, just the storyline. I think it does a good service to the book as well. So I'm excited to read through the book again too.
Yeah, I don't know if the movie had quite the payoff they were going for, but what it did do is it did really carry an emotional weight the whole way through the movie.
Yeah.
And through the various storylines. I think it did fantastic at keeping the emotional weight high through the varied storylines, and keeping the level of intrigue up, I think, too. Yeah. All right, for me, I'm going to go with a movie that is on HBO Max, No Sudden Move, that just came out this year. And this stars Benicio del Toro. I believe Don Cheadle is in it as well. And it's a guy recently released from prison, descends into a tangled underbelly of rapidly changing 1950s Detroit. So I have not seen this. This seems intriguing to me. It's on my watch list for HBO Max, so I'm hoping to check that out this week. And so that's my recommendation for you.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, that is the show. Thank you for tuning in to Film for Fans. Make sure you check out our website, where we have articles, reviews, and other content, including the recent Cars episode, or Cars article, where we talk about my favorite movie cars. Also, make sure you tell your friends about the podcast and rate and subscribe for us. Until next time, enjoy the movies.